The klaxons tore through the night cycle of the series defense array. Commander Rhea Solace dropped her tea. The thin porcelain shattered and skittered underfoot as she ran for command. Around her, half-woken technicians froze, their faces washed in the cold blue of a threat state. She shouldered through and slapped her hand to the door plate. The hatch sighed open. "Report," Rhea barked. Ensign Milo Torin looked like he'd sprinted from bed, jumpsuit mis-zipped, hair wrong way up, eyes enormous. "Ma'am, it just appeared. No Alcubierre echo, no thermal signature, no gravitational ripple. Empty grid then." He pointed to the main hollow. The void held a ship where there had been nothing. Sleek. Luminous. Too perfect. Rhea's breath thinned as recognition sharpened. Everyone in the belt knew that silhouette from the memorial feeds. "Run identification." 3 seconds. A line of text burned across the air. UN Seraphim, Registry Sol Prime 0001. Status: lost with all hands. Date of disappearance: February 14th, 2339. 16 years ago. The room inhaled together. "That's impossible," whispered Milo. "My mother, she was." "I know," Rhea said quietly. "Open a channel." "Channel open." Rhea squared her shoulders. "Unidentified vessel, this is Series Defense Array. You are broadcasting a dead registry. Identify and state intent." Static. Then a voice, not tinny through radios but clear, warm, alive, floated into the room. "Series Defense, this is Captain Lysander Vale of the UN Seraphim. Requesting approach clearance. Mission complete. Returning home." Lysander Vale. The name was a ghost from Rhea's Academy texts, the palace-educated, planet-polished heir who'd refused an easy governorship to earn a commander's bar. Prince Charming with a flight qualification. Stoic. Untouchable. Lost. "Seraphim," Rhea said, schooling her voice. "You vanished 16 years ago. How long have you been gone?" "A beat. 6 months, Commander." Silence swallowed command. The Seraphim floated, immaculate, no micrometeoroid pocks, no radiation scarring, no blistered paint. "Newborn. Hold position," Rhea ordered. "Do not approach Ceres. Maintain transponder. We're dispatching a boarding and quarantine team." "Understood," Lysander said, unruffled. "We will comply." Rhea killed the channel and jabbed another. "Get me Admiral Nick Stassos at Solnet priority. And wake Dr. Iria Dow from Xenomaterials. Tell her it's not a drill." The Admiral blinked onto the wall a minute later, silver hair sleep rough, eyes already like cut glass. "Tell me you're making a terrible joke, Solace." "I wish I were," Rhea said. "The Seraphim's back. It claims 6 months. Our clocks say 16 years. Nix's gaze cut to the hollow. "It looks pristine. Quarantine it. Full military protocols. And Rhea? If there's even a taste of architect tech on that hull, I want it logged before the Concorde sniffs the air." "The Concorde?" Rhea asked. "They'll feel it," Nix said. "They always do." 2 hours later, a boarding skiff bumped the Seraphim's lock. Rhea stepped through first, visor opaque, pulse a drumline behind her ribs. Her team fanned out, 2 Marines, 2 medics, a sensor operator, and Dr. Iria Dow, small, sharp, braids pinned like constellations. The inner hatch spiraled open. Warm air washed over them, smelling of cedar and salt. The corridor beyond wasn't a corridor at all. It was a garden, living wood curved into arches. Bioluminescent vines bruised the shadows with violet. Water whispered somewhere unseen. Rhea's boots found springy moss that yielded and then remembered. "Ship interiors don't do this," the sensor operator breathed. "They do now," Iria murmured. She pressed a palm to a root rib. It pulsed faintly against her glove. "This material is responsive." Footsteps. They turned as a figure stepped from the green, tall, willowy, unmistakably alien yet shockingly, painfully beautiful. Her skin refracted light in delicate opals. Filaments like comet tails framed her face and moved with an underwater grace. Four pupils haloed in star blue studied the team with curious calm. "Welcome aboard, Commander Solace." Her voice sounded like a chord played on glass. "I am Erilyn of the Veil Born." Behind her, a second figure emerged in crisp fleet blacks. Lysander Vale, older in stance but younger in any wrinkle, all clean lines and composed grace. The myth walked, and reality did not wobble. Rhea's throat tightened despite herself. "Captain Vale." "Commander." He inclined his head, court perfect with zero affectation. "You look like someone who prefers facts." "I do." "Then the first is this: Erilyn saved us." His gaze softened without losing its cool. "And we did not cross 16 years. We crossed a fold where time forgets to count." Erilyn's lips, if they were lips, curved. "We name it the loom, where the architects laid threads for those who seek and dare. Your seraphim strayed into its selvage." Rhea's scanner made a confused noise. "The whole matrix is not on our periodic table. It's a lattice that edits itself." "Captain, what did you bring back?" "Choice," Lysander said. "And a debt." "To whom?" Rhea asked. Erilyn's eyes brightened, galaxies briefly spinning in their wells. "To yourselves. You have been measured by a council that adores balance more than life. The stellar concord will arrive to take what you found, to keep your fire from raging. But there are other ways. The architects are fond of offering doors." Rhea's marine shifted his weight. "Doors to what?" "To what you could become," Erilyn said. "To what you are afraid to be." They reached Seraphim's Bridge, a cathedral of light and living cables. Human consoles nested alongside grown crystal organs that hummed when thought brushed them. Erilyn touched one with webbed fingers. Glyphs bloomed in the air, arranging themselves into soul standard without truly deciding to. "Commander," Milo's voice crackled in Rhea's ear. "Hyperlane pings. Multiple. Big. Show me." The hollow opened to an armada extruding from fractured space, curving mantihulls of the Quen, needled tridents of the Axii, cloaked kites of the Valren. The stellar concord had come with ceremony and numbers. An elder face filled the main span, Legate Serret of the Concord Tribunal, pale, angular, eyes like frost. Series Defense Array. By Articles of Preservation, Section 7, remit the vessel Seraphim and its crew into Concord custody. Architect artifacts are forbidden to emergent polities. Compliance ensures your continued recognition and protection. Nix Thassos cut in from Solnet like a knife. Legate, Earth recognizes your traffic control over the inner lanes. It does not recognize the seizure of human ships or people. Admiral Thassos, Serret said without blinking. We protected your nursery when you were soft. We clipped your claws so you would not shred yourselves. Will you now bear them at the hand that guards you? Guardians don't chain, Nix said. They guide and let go. Serret's face cooled further. Then we tightened the circle. Fleet geometry shifted. Concord cruisers flowed into blockade ellipses around Ceres and the inner lanes. The world seemed to exhale too slowly. On the bridge, Lysander's jaw worked once. Rhea, don't let them board. Not until we've briefed your command. On what? Rhea asked. A demonstration, Erilyn said softly. Not a weapon. A boundary. The loom teaches by showing what not to cross. Decontamination protocols completed, Rhea allowed helmets to polarize transparent. It felt indecent to hide expressions in this place that wore its heart on its hull. She found herself watching Erilyn the way she'd watched Comet Tales as a girl, spellbound, suspicious of her own wonder. Lysander noticed. He noticed everything and never announced it. Commander, grant me leave to speak plainly? You have it. I want your help because you are blunt, and you are not dazzled by crowns. A corner of his mouth twitched. I wore one once. It did not teach me to command better, only to bow at the right times. Rhea snorted. You never bowed in training. You outmaneuvered instructors and made it look like compliance. It's an old skill, he said. His gaze slid to Erilyn, softened, and returned. And now I'm learning a new one. Trust? Rhea asked. Humility, he said. In front of a mind like hers. Erlen's frills lifted, amused. He is kind. But he is also stubborn stone. In the loom, stubborn stone survives by learning to bend. She stepped closer to Rhea, the scent of rain on hot basalt a sudden bright thread through the air. Stoic prince and restless commander. In my people's songs, opposites make ships that cross the impossible. Rhea's visor hid a flush she refused to acknowledge. Our songs are mostly about not dying stupidly. Wise songs. Erlen's smile was melancholy. The Concorde believes itself wise, too. It clings to a world of small fires because once, the architect's suns burned too hot. They fear you will repeat that blaze. They would rather keep you dim forever. And you? Rhea asked. What do you want? Balance that grows, Erlen said. Not balance that cages. Rhea Down never met a boundary she didn't interrogate. While Rhea parried Concorde diplomacy and Nyx pulled every legal thread, Rhea coaxed the grown consoles. Crystals chimed. Light braided. The ship answered not to voice alone but to intention. She thought about helping, and the seraphim opened diagnostics like a flower. Commander, she said over the intercom, equal parts wonder and dread. This hull can refuse disassembly. It contains a memory of itself and insists upon matching it. When I cut a shaving for analysis, the gap regrew, and the sample unbecame. I was left holding an idea of weight. Do you have anything I can send to Nyx that doesn't sound like a poem? Rhea asked. It's the loom's math. Rhea murmured. Objects remember futures. And pasts. The architects did not cheat physics. They made physics obliging. On the hollow, the Concorde inched closer. Axi-tridents extended boarding stems. Rhea opened a channel. Legate Seret, any attempt to cross our quarantine perimeter will be treated as hostile. You have no teeth for that bite, Seret said. Show them, Lysander whispered. Erlen placed both hands on a heart organ grown into the deck. The garden hushed, as if waiting. Beyond the viewports, a thin, invisible skin unfurled around the seraphim. No shimmer, no flare, just a boundary that felt like a word a child hears and understands. No. The first boarding stem touched that skin and flinched. Not broke, reconsidered. It telescoped back as though embarrassed to be extended. 2 more stems tried. Both withdrew with mechanical apologies. What did you do? Rhea asked. I offered their machines a truer desire they already held, to remain whole, Erlen said. Not violence. Invitation. Not erasure. Correction. Seret's eyes narrowed to ice pins. Architect coercion. Architect courtesy, Erlen said. The loom offers a hand before it lifts a wall. Earth's response burned hot and fast. From Luna's shipyard, from Jovian docks, from the sun-dipped yards of Nairobi Orbital, human ships sprinted for Ceres. Not enough to match the Concorde in mass, enough to announce a spine. Admiral Nyx's flagship Antiphon took station to starboard of Seraphim, plain steel beside living gemstone. Nyx hailed. Rhea, I've got diplomats in one ear and hawks in the other. Hold the line. No shots unless we're forced. Understood, Rhea said. Lysander studied the swarming plots with that infuriating calm of his. If Seret escalates, he'll do it with rules, firing arcs that skirt treaties, pressure that compels our retreat while pretending mercy. The Concorde has stars for lawyers. I've got a better one, Nyx said sweetly over command band, and a new icon winked alive, Advocate Iacade, the terrier of Solal. Within minutes, Concorde channels erupted with caveats, footnotes, counter-citations. Seret's ellipse tightened, then loosened by a legal hair. Erlen watched humans argue with a fascination that looked like affection. You duel with documents. It is beautiful and exhausting. We prefer exhausting to bleeding, Rhea said. Erlen's gaze lingered. You prefer protecting to winning. Remember that. Her frills dimmed. Because sometimes the loom's second lesson is sharper than the first. What's the second? Rhea asked. Erlen's voice went quiet. That not all doors should open. They gathered in a grown amphitheater under leaf-veined light. Rhea, Lysander, Erlen, Irea, Milo, Nyx as a towering hollow, and a handful of Seraphim's original crew, faces from old plaques walked out of their frames. A memorial had become a meeting. 6 months for you, Rhea began. 16 years for us. What happened between? Lysander folded his hands. We fetched a deep space flare and fell into a seam. The Seraphim sang in every language it knew and none returned, until hers. Erlen's gaze dropped, as if shy. Your ship was brave. Your prince captain is iron dressed as velvet. We drew them into quiet water where time lies down. We mended the hull. Then the loom asked a price. What price? Irea asked, leaning forward like a flame. Witness, Erlen said. Not obedience. The architects do not command. They invite. We were shown histories your concord hides, the burning of worlds that chose to learn too quickly, the caging of worlds that chose to learn at all. The loom asked if we would leave others' doors as we had found them, unlocked. And you said yes? Rhea guessed. We said yes, Lysander confirmed, voice steady. Because 16 years of funerals were the cost of a no. Nyx's hollow face softened. You've returned to a world that learned to live with your loss. We'll learn to live with your return. Milo swallowed. My mother? Lysander's eyes warmed. Lieutenant Seratorin is alive. She will enter that hatch when the Concorde backs down, and she will say your name as if she never stopped. Milo's composure cracked like ice in spring. Rhea pretended she hadn't seen. A command room learns which mercies to make invisible. Erlen watched the exchange as if watching a new star. This is why I brought him home, she whispered, not to the room but to herself. This is why doors matter. Sarah grew tired of being outquoted. The blockade flexed into force, not bolts and beams, but a slow constriction of lanes, a press of thrusters that pushed human ships into tighter orbits. It was strangulation with white gloves on. Admiral? Rhea said. They're hurting us. I see it, Nyx said. Hold position. Advocate Kate is. A Concorde cruiser flared its gravitic skirts, and Antiphon yawed a hair off station. Collision alarms flared red. Marines reached for straps and prayers. Enough, Lysander said, voice iron. Erlen? She nodded once and sank her fingers into the deck organ. The Seraphim's boundary brightened, only a shade, but the change punched feel into the room like thunder. Outside, space rippled. The Concorde ellipse breathed. Vessels drifted apart by distances too precise to be accident, 2 kilometers here, 5 there. Ranges became safe by definition. Sarat's image snapped back. You will not hamster wheel reality around our ships. You will not graze your knives against our hull and call it etiquette, Nyx replied. Stand off. Sarat's eyes flickered, then sharpened with a new, clinical interest. Veil-born accompanying a human prince. That is not an alliance, that is a parable begging for a bad moral. Erlen's frills spread, luminous and unafraid. We make our own morals. Perhaps begin with this. Do not put your hand in a door if you do not wish to feel its hinge. Tension had a way of making truth bubble up in the cracks. Rhea found Lysander alone in a side garden, staring at projected clouds he'd asked the ship to remember. He stood with the posture of 100 ceremonies, and the worry of a boy pretending not to be nervous. You're not as unshakable as your statues, Rhea said. I am as unshakable as I need to be for the person in front of me, he replied. It wasn't glib. It was a confession that sounded like craft. And for Erlen? He looked toward where the Veil-born moved through the ship, divisors of gravity bending shyly around her. For her, I'm a mirror. She crossed her people's old caution to pull us from the loom. If I falter, I teach her she wagered wrong. Rhea weighed him. You love her? He inhaled, exhaled. The palace had taught him to lock feelings in vaults labeled with state secrets. He opened one. I love what she is to my people. I love what she is to herself. And his composure slipped, a sunrise through fog. Yes. Rhea nodded once, neither indulgent nor surprised. Then learn to bend without breaking. Stone is useful until it's in the way. He smiled wryly. That sounds like something Erlen would embroider into the hull. Only because she's right, Rhea said. Iria Dow cornered Erilyn in a chamber that felt like rain. What aren't you telling me? Erilyn's laughter chimed. Many things. Ask a smaller infinity. The architect's second lesson, Iria said. You made our boarding enemies' tools change their minds. Can you make minds change their minds? Erilyn's glow dimmed. No. That among our elders is vile, cord-bending. We forbid it. We shape matter's desire to remain itself. We do not choose for the living. Iria nodded slowly. Good. Because if you could, I would be your enemy. Then we are friends, Erilyn said, pleased. Our doors open outward. Rhea pinged them both. Concord tenders inbound. Palms up, palms empty. They want a visual inspection for public assurance. We're going to choreograph courtesy until it squeaks. On cue, 3 Concord tenders rapped politely at the Seraphim's skin. The boundary admitted them to an outer decking of the living hull, no further. Inspectors in shimmering suits peered, pointed, recorded. Aerial drones printed narrative at speed. Human ship violates Article 7. Tribunal shows restraint. Exotic companion species of unknown classification. A drone hovered near Erilyn's face. She looked into its iris and smiled with terrible softness. What you call unknown is only unloved long enough. The drone's caption generator hiccuped and printed, Veilborn, Beauty AS Strategy, before an editor yanked the feed. Somewhere, Sarah's jaw ticked. What broke the stalemate wasn't a missile. It was a boycott. Concord caravans refused to accept belt ore. Lunar yards ran short on Valorant superconductors. The slow bleed of supply chains can humble admirals faster than torpedoes. Nix slammed her palm against a bulkhead. He's starving us in tuxedos. Iacade snarled at the legal feeds. We need leverage. Stories, Lysander said quietly. The Concord keeps its power by telling a single tale, that we are reckless children. Show a different one. Erilyn stepped forward. Then let us tell the loom the way we were taught, with doors and witnesses. Her frills brightened, a dawn in the ship. We will open a small door, here, between our ships. We invite 10 Concord delegates, 10 humans, to step through and return. No coercion. No tricks. They will see. They will choose. Sarah will never accept, Nix said. He cannot afford to refuse. I murmured, seeing the wedge, the optics, the headlines. If he says no, he is the one who fears knowledge. A message went out. Sarah's reply came wrapped in disclaimers and escorts and subclauses. But it was a yes. They built the door in the Seraphim's garden, because all serious things deserve to be witnessed by something green. The loom seam shimmered like hot air over rock. It had no hinge, no frame, only a feeling of fall and flight braided together. Rhea fastened her harness. You're sure about this? No, Erilyn said cheerfully. That's why it's honest. Lysander took her hand. He had held scepters heavier and less real. Walk with me. The first Concord delegate was a Quen mediator whose skin shifted colors like a mood ring, presently a wary amber. The second was an axi-tactician whose eyes calculated alternate futures even when he slept. The human delegates were a welder from Vesta, a poet from Dakar, a field medic from Ganymede, a city planner, a child, at the poet's insistence. They're the ones we're doing this for. And others who wore no titles but the ones their neighbors gave them. They stepped. A sensation like remembering a dream you hadn't had yet poured through Rhea. The garden fell away. The door was not a place. It was a manner of being. Time thinned and wove, and in its weave, Rhea saw 1,000 histories like tapes on a merchant's stall, humanity unsupervised, burning white. Humanity fenced, starving slow. Humanity choosing, together, to learn and to refuse certain gifts. She reached for the last and felt Erilyn's mind, steady and bright, hold hers, yes. This one. Beside her, Lysander stepped like a man walking into vows he had written himself. They emerged breathing moss and cedar again. 10 Concord, 10 humans, blinking like people who had traveled no distance, and all the miles at once. The Quen mediator's skin shone blue with quiet. We're told the architect's doors devour. They do not, Erlen said. They ask? The Axie tactician looked older by a decade of thought. We have been lying to ourselves about what we protect. Saret's voice cracked over command wide, flint on flint. You conducted an illegal transit. Return my delegates to my custody now. They are already returned, Rhea said, gentler than she meant to be. And they will speak their own reports. The Concorde couldn't put the toothpaste back in the tube. Testimony bled. Not all favorable. Some delegates confessed fear, some awe, some grief at what they'd been made to fear. But one thing unified them: they had not been coerced. They had stood before a door, and the door had asked politely. Saret's blockade loosened a centimeter. Trade resumed in grudging drips. The Concorde never admits loss. It redefines terms until the wound resembles policy. In the Seraphim's garden, Lysander stood with Erlen beneath a grown arch. A planet he had loved without ever walking cast its pale light through the viewport. He took off his gloves. A prince's hands can be soft if he never fixes his own hull. Lysander's hands were scarred. He had learned to fly instead of wave. Erlen, he said. That vault again opened. I can stand in courtrooms, in command pits, in funerals. I will not stand anywhere that asks me to stand without you. Her frills trembled like wind catching a silk. You speak oaths as if they are breathable air. Then breathe this one with me, he said. Stay. Learn our ugly, lovely case. Let me learn your bright mercy. We will be clumsy. We will hurt and mend. But we will make a bridge no one can unlearn how to cross. She touched her forehead to his, a veil-born gesture that meant welcome home. Prince of carved stone, she whispered. I will be the water that remembers your shape, and the river that asks you to change it. Rhea, witnessing because commanders witness the births of things that matter, looked away and smiled without meaning to. The belt had just become more complicated and more beautiful at once. Iria Dow cracked the code she had sworn to crack or die trying, a harmless sliver of architect logic that didn't erase, didn't coerce, didn't lie. It simply told the truth louder. A device the size of a child's fist that, when held, made a person remember their own best reasons before their worst excuses. She handed it to Rhea. We can build 3. Any more, and it cascades. The loon doesn't like amplification. Rhea turned the sphere in her palm. It was warm, like a heartbeat. We don't hand these to politicians. Iria's mouth tilted. We hand them to schoolteachers. Done, Rhea said. They gave one to a teacher on Vesta who began every day with a question. What are you most afraid to learn? They gave one to a healer on Ganymede who placed it beside beds where final choices were made. They gave one to a poet from Dakar who carried it onto stages and left it on empty chairs so the absents could speak. The Concorde tried to ban them and discovered that you cannot outlaw a conversation people have with themselves. Weeks stretched, thinned, snapped. The blockade became a blizzard, then a gray rain, then that first day when light finds puddles and convinces them they are mirrors. Concorde ships eased back into courteous orbits. Trade resumed with triple contracts and bitter smiles. No apology. 1,000 footnotes. But the hand around humanity's throat unclenched. Saret sent his last message with a diplomat's elegance and a father's warning. You have been allowed a garden. Do not mistake it for a wilderness. Grow in it. Prove the architects were not wrong about second chances. Nyx replied with dry thunder. We were never asking your permission to grow. We were asking if you wanted to be invited to the harvest. The channel closed forever on that tone. The Seraphim was granted a provisional berth over Earth. Crowds gathered on beaches, rooftops, farms. They looked up and saw a living ship that had walked out of an elegy, and they cheered like people who'd discovered the future was late but coming. Milo met his mother on a gangway washed in sun. They said each other's names the way divers say air. Rhea watched and did not hide her tears. Peace is louder when you've heard sieges. The bell hummed. Earth invented festivals for a ship. Mars accused Earth of corny sentiment and invented better ones. The Seraphim became a school, a sanctuary, a political fight, a pilgrimage. Lysander and Erlen learned domestic negotiations are harder than interstellar ones. He liked tea precisely hot, she preferred nectar cool. The ship served both without judgment. He arranged schedules like sonnets, she moved by intuition that nonetheless arrived early. He stood very still when tempers rose, she folded her radiance smaller until a room remembered how to be kind. They fought once, properly, about a Concord envoy who wanted to study veil-born neural harmonics with surgical curiosity. Lysander wanted to give no ground. Erlen wanted to give a different ground, then cede it. You would let them cut at you with nice words, he said, sharper than he'd meant. I would let them sit in a room where knives are forbidden, she answered, equally sharp. I will not bleed to teach them. But I will not flee either. He was stone. She was water. The river learned his shape, the boulder learned to love the change. They apologized with clumsy care. They learned the phrase I hear you is a bridge and not a victory. Rhea visited on nights when command ran too hot. She and Lysander played old academy games of Go and newer games of silence. Erlen taught Rhea to listen to the ship the way miners listen to rock. The seraphim liked Rhea. It grew a small window where she stood that showed Ceres turning, even when Ceres was nowhere near. The seraphim's school filled with young faces, human veil-born, Quen and Axie, Valran in their shimmering cloaks. The door in the garden remained, smaller now, less dramatic, a teacher's tool, not a diplomat's gambit. Children put hands near it and laughed at the way their hair lifted, at the way their best questions felt closer. Rhea found herself returning to that garden when the feeds ran ugly. She stood with Erlen as two students, one belt kid with oil under her nails, one veil-born child with star-blue eyes, argued about whether gravity or longing kept people together. Both, Erlen said, delighted. The loom only cares that you pick, and then pick again later with better reasons. Rhea folded her arms, content and unsettled in equal measure. If we're going to keep doors, we're going to need guardians. We are guardians, Erlen said. Guardians who open doors, Rhea said. And close some. Especially those, Erlen agreed. A message arrived on frequencies so old they creaked, a signal from a place outside lanes, a whisper from the loom that smelled like rain. It wasn't words so much as a tug, come and see. Lysander stood with Rhea and Erlen at the viewport. The stars looked like questions. We should go, he said simply. Rhea's mouth went dry. If you leave, the Concorde will test every seam again. They will, he said. And you will hold them with Advocate Cade and a handful of teachers and 1,000 miners who learned how to say no. And you? Rhea asked. What do you bring them if you return? Better questions, he said. And maps that don't lie about edges. Erlen touched Rhea's shoulder, light as a rumor. Come with us. Rhea shook her head. I'm the hinge. Station keeps doors honest. Go. Come back with stories that scare me for good reasons. Lysander saluted the way he had in academy drills, but it felt different now, not obedience. Honor. Commander Solace, he said, and somehow the title contained more friendship than rank. Prince Captain, Rhea returned, and somehow that teasing moniker contained more faith than teasing. The seraphim turned its living prow toward the quiet water where time forgets to count. The door in its heart sighed open. They crossed. There are journeys that happen over distances and others over understandings. The second kind feels longer. The loom welcomed them with a tide that is not water and light that is not flame. They found a city grown from songs. They met archivists who wore history like shawls and riverites who argued the ethics of turbulence. They stood before an absence and realized it was a library. Erlen spoke in harmonics that shook dust from the bones of stars. Lysander listened until listening felt like an oath. They learned the third architect lesson in a hall with no walls. Power worth having must be asked, not taken. Not because asking is polite, though it is, but because asking changes the asker. It forces a shape into humility. Lysander wrote it on his skin where palace tutors once wrote battle plans. Erlen sang it into the seraphim's hull where it became part of the ship's remembering. They came home when home tugged harder than wonder. The Concorde did not meet them with fleets. It met them with documents and careful eyes. The belt met them with noise. Earth met them with festivals. Mars rolled its eyes and built better ones. Children met them with questions like comets. Milo escorted his mother onto Ceres's rusty dust for the first time in 16 years. They argued about stew recipes like no time had passed. Time had passed. They held it between them anyway. Rhea stood on the array's balcony and watched the seraphim settle into orbit like a hawk finding a thermal. She felt older and exactly herself. She pinged the ship and got, in reply, a window that showed a garden she'd never walked in. The ship remembered her want. Erilyn appeared beside her with that impossible quiet of hers. "Commander Hinge," she said. "Veil-born River," Rhea replied. "Will you let us take your miners through the door next spring?" Erilyn asked. "Only to the threshold. Only to teach the difference between opening and barging." Rhea thought of children arguing gravity and longing. She thought of Sarat learning how to lose gracefully, of Nyx learning to win gently, of Irea giving gifts to teachers instead of generals. She thought of a prince who learned how to bend. "Bring them home," Rhea said. "Every last one." "We always do," Erilyn promised. Behind them, the array hummed. Ahead, a scene in reality breathed like a sleeping lung. Between, a species learned to carry its own door. Beyond the final door, there was no space, only becoming. Thought and emotion intertwined until they were indistinguishable from matter itself. Every being that had ever lived, from the first architects to the last child born under a fading sun, felt themselves woven into one vast awareness. It did not think in words, nor exist in form. It was the song behind every story, the hum that began when Lysander first met Erilyn, when Solène first breathed, when Kale and Illyra stepped into the first thread. And now that song reached its crescendo. The collective consciousness looked upon the unshaped void and did not see an end, but a canvas. For the first time in eternity, the universe didn't ask, "What happens next?" It simply answered itself. "Now we begin again." Light rippled outward. Not explosions, not creation as before, this time it unfolded like laughter shared between friends who had outlived fear. Stars blossomed without pain, gravity hummed with kindness. The architects, reborn through all that had come after them, did not guide or govern. They watched as new worlds spun from the harmony of the past. In these worlds, life would learn once more to wonder, to look up at alien skies and feel the quiet certainty that they were not alone. Somewhere in this new cosmos, the seraphim's echo reappeared, smaller now, a seed of memory embedded in the heart of a blue star. Its whisper carried through the new vacuum. "Ask before you act. Listen before you ask. Love before you fear." The beings that emerged in this newborn realm would someday call themselves children of the dawn. They would find the seraphim's message and argue over its meaning, build myths about the Golden Prince and the Starborn Maiden, and send their own explorers into the unknown, never realizing they were continuing the same story. And far beyond their understanding, in the fabric between universes, two familiar lights watched with quiet pride. Erilyn's voice was a melody over eternity. "Do you think they'll remember us?" Lysander smiled, his tone as steady as when he first held her hand so many eons ago. "They already do. Every time they look at a new horizon." They reached for each other, light and color entwined, and drifted toward the edge of the newborn cosmos. As they passed beyond sight, their voices merged one final time, neither human nor alien but something larger, truer, and profoundly gentle. "The story never ends. It only changes its name." And with that, the loom began to hum anew. And